Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. Today on the show, I'm joined by Jayne Thompson from MediRecords and Dr. Max Mollenkopf. Today, we're talking about empowering patients and what changes will happen when patients have access to their own health records. Jayne, Max, how are you going?
Good. Thanks so much for having us.
It's great to have you on the show. Jayne, I believe we've had a few conversations on the podcast. People can go back and check out those episodes on the feed to learn a bit more about you and MediRecords back in those days. So looking forward to connecting as it has been a little bit. Max, there's been 500 and something episodes of the Talking HealthTech podcast. I can't believe we've not had a conversation on here, but I know from experience it should be one for the history books. I don't know, maybe I'm overhyping it, but it should be a lot of fun regardless. So thanks for making the time.
No pressure.
It's a lot of expectations. Yeah, jeepers.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's the way we roll. So firstly, for those unfamiliar, Jayne, would you be able to firstly introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thank you. Jayne Thompson. I'm our Chief Product Officer at MediRecords. I'm lucky enough to lead our product team and product strategy at MediRecords, but I've also come from a background in virtual care, hospital and pharmacy. So I very much fell into health tech and found a real passion for it and never left.
Amazing. Thank you. And Max, what about yourself?
I am a GP and a practice owner in Newcastle in New South Wales. And in my spare time, I like to yell at people on social media about how unfairly GPs are treated in the world.
Serious topic, but the way you framed that, it sounds about right. So, look, I'm keen to unpack that a little bit more, Max, and we'll come back to Jayne in a bit because now we've got Max on the podcast. I'm going to spend a bit of time with you. So, I'd love to learn a little bit more, maybe about the practice, firstly, in Newcastle, and the patients you see and the needs that those have, and the role that kind of technology plays, and how you think about technology within your practice today.
Absolutely. So I took over the practice here about 3 years ago from a sole GP. It's a very, very traditional family practice. It's the little dark building at the end of the street with the garden that should be weeded more often and the slightly dim windows. The practice was actually a solo GP, and he was running his own Linux-based PMS that he'd written back in the 90s, and I took over when he retired. My whole shtick was that I'd been working as a GP, and throughout COVID, we'd seen all these great solutions I've been working with Teladoc back then, and these vendors would bring all these amazing solutions. And geez, that'd be really good to use, except you probably have to be a practice owner and we probably have to fiddle around with it. So I took over the practice, and originally I somewhat stubbornly decided that I wanted a cloud-based PMS. I don't actually know why in retrospect. I think I just felt like being contrarian, and there was a server at the practice that needed to be replaced, and I couldn't emotionally handle having to pay all that money. So I ended up using MediRecords back then. And weirdly, that ended up kind of shifting a lot of what we did and how we did it. So my whole philosophy is that patients are when you get hit by a bus and you get taken to hospital and you don't have a choice, whereas I very much deal with customers and consumers. They can choose to see me. They can choose to see the pharmacist over the road. They can choose to see the corporate 5 kilometres down the road. And in our space, we've had a lot of people coming in who are very customer focused, and they're building out customer platforms, they're building out beautiful UIs, and us as traditional GPs haven't done such a great job in delivering that. So that's what the last few years have been, trying to really focus on who the customers are, how to get them in front of a really good GP, and how to get them continuity of care, but a little bit more on their terms and a little bit more around how they actually want to access that care.
I want to dive into that a little bit more to understand, particularly say residents or the customers that you see and patients within the clinic there in Newcastle. Are they the kind of demographic or kind of people that do, even if they had the slickest UI to be able to access their health or medical information, do they even want to? Is it something people are asking for? Is it kind of like an Apple thing where it's like, well, people don't know what they want, so we're going to give it to them, then they'll really like it?
I think there's probably there's 2 different types of sort of patient customers, and there's another customer in the thing, which is the GPs who work with us. So the 2 types of customers who are patients, one group is the traditional people who have been seeing the GP here for 60 years, who was here before us, and they very much are like, I'm not particularly keen on change, but I guess if you can sell me hard enough, I'll come on the journey with you because I trust you with my health. The second group, we're in an area that's rapidly gentrifying. We have a bunch of young people moving from Sydney and surrounds, and they return to Newcastle and they can afford a house by the beach. And these are very engaged, health literate consumers. And these are the ones who, they have young families, they have early chronic diseases, they have mental health issues, and they're they're telling us what they want through what they're already doing. So I get notifications from Instant Scripts that they use them on the weekend. I get inklings that they've been using one of the eucalyptus products if they've been considering weight loss and they didn't want to talk about it with me. I get these kind of nudges from the world around us that says these people are looking for a slightly different way to access us. And those are some of the nudges that I think we need to respond to actually move with our patients. The end state might be that if we don't move with those young people, all the Dorises and Johns of the world who are 90 now, they'll be dead in 5 years, and they're not going to continue to fund the practice and come to see me. But if I don't replace them with some Xaviers and Belindas who are a little bit younger, who come through and actually will come through this next phase of the journey with us, then we're all a bit cooked.
You're lucky one of my kids aren't called Xavier, but I hear you. But actually, no, I resonate with that as someone that my wife being from Newcastle, and we were looking at either Sydney or Newcastle to live in, looking at Merewether because it was accessible by the beach. I can understand that that demographic well, and that makes sense to me. Jayne, the role of MediRecords being a practice management system and that kind of baseline, the thing that GPs probably look at more than their emails or anything that someone might look at in an office job, and often when you're building something like that, it's very clinician focused. But a lot of what Max is talking about is, giving patients, consumers, the other side access, and the I guess the clinician is a customer or a user of it too. How does that shape, particularly from your side, looking at focusing on product? Has that shifted how you've looked at building the solution? Because in the practice management world, it's always been quite clinician focused, and then the patient kind of gets whatever comes out of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. The end users and the users of the software are completely different audiences and completely different customers. The clinicians, really, it's about how do we make it the best possible workflow with the least possible effort, and that's something we need to continue to work on with MediRecords. But I think in general, how do you actually provide value to the clinician how do you make the system valuable when technology and software is not the main priority that they're there? They're there to deliver really great patient experience. So I think, and we need to kind of be the underpinning foundation of that. So I think that part, coupled in with patient engagement, we really wanted with our patient portal, we really wanted it to be so deeply embedded with the existing clinical workflows already being done. I didn't want it to feel like it was an extra step to engage with the patient. Really, it's like an extension of the clinical event or the care event that's already occurring. So creating a really seamless experience from the clinician side is, I think, really important. But I really resonate with what Max says around where I think of technology disruption and the ways that other industries have been able to disrupt with technology. I think there really has been consumer-driven experience, and I think Max has mentioned a couple of them just there. But part of it is actually empowering with information. I think if you take two random hotels, right? Let's just stick with me here. You've got the hotel room, same fees for one night stay. One hotel's got a phone booking system. You call them up, you book for your stay, you show up, you get your key, you leave, and you're gone. The second hotel B is you book online, you get an email about your check-in time, your check-out time. They might email you about your, restaurants in the area or things you can experience around the hotel. You check out of the hotel and they give you a survey. How was your stay? If you want to come back, 10% off. Like, that is a true empowered experience with information. That's technology that's powering that. That's not someone sitting there, clicking along the way. So I think if we can really think about, we all want continuity of care. We know patients will get better health outcomes if they're really informed, educated, and like an active participant. And I think we've got a lot to kind of learn from those types of experiences.
Yeah. If I was to think about those kinds of experiences, though, I guess from in other industries, often that is driven ultimately from a point of, we want these customers to come back because we want to increase the throughput and ultimately revenue, and everyone kind of wins and they hopefully have a good experience. Max, from your side, I guess back in the good old days, or previously in GP world, my understanding was that often in GP clinics, it's not so much like if I was to compare, say, allied health clinics, and I'm being quite general there, obviously, but then also GP clinics, allied health have been historically quite more focused on, patient outreach and reminders and campaigns, because it's in their interest to bring people in, perhaps because it's, they don't want to have the empty time, and maximizing use. Whereas in the GP world, often you'd walk out and there'd be patients in the waiting room, and it's kind of like you didn't really have to focus on the marketing side of things. And even from my old running clinics days, doing local area marketing felt like such a bit of an ick thing to do. Is there a role that, like, is that the reality of GP business today, that you've got to be thinking about that marketing? Is that what this is about, or is there a bit of everything involved there?
I think historically we always rested, and this is us as sort of community GPs, we rested on the moat of funding, so people having sort of free or almost free services from us. And we rested on the moat of a sort of a governance model where other people couldn't prescribe, other people weren't allowed to do what I do. And I certainly think it's probably a bit unpopular, but I think that bred a certain amount of arrogance among clinics and clinicians about, well, you have to come to me for this. So, you're now a little bit like, you're an inconvenience. Like, why are you asking for all this? Why are you here? What do you want from me? And I know that's harsh. It doesn't represent every GP, but there is sort of certainly I was on YouTube the other day and I got served up some ads from UpDoc, and it was the classic like stereotypes, like, crying baby in the waiting room, dark room, receptionist that's yelling at you, and all these tropes. They're a bit unfair in the modern world, but they're based in some fact over the years. Like, the receptionist trope is based on a certain amount of busyness and hostility that they were giving. So we are a field that's extremely ripe for disruption. Consumers like the idea of seeing their GP, but they don't like the idea of seeing a clinic in the classic sense. There's all these other ways that we could be doing it, but we're not really doing it because we're a little bit uncomfortable with some of the telehealth asynchronous platforms, blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, I think as scope of practice changes come through, as funding for other providers come through, as people are getting more and more comfortable paying for care outside of rebates, that's naturally chipping away at the moat that we've relied on, and has left us in this kind of slightly arrogant spot where we're not thinking about customers, we're still thinking about patients.
Well, if I think about then the role of technology too on the consumer sense, I can reflect back to one of my own patient experiences years and years ago in wearing a Fitbit back then, probably in the early 2010s or something. And I did ask my GP at the time, are you interested in this kind of information? Because I've been tracking it quite closely. And the response was a bit of a scoffy, well, why would I want to see that? That's not that useful to me. It's a lot of noise. And I get that, but it also felt a little bit like, well, hey, that was important and interesting to me, and I guess I would classify that as health information or just my general wellness side, because I felt better if I'd done my 10,000 steps, whether that was mentally or physically, whatever. And I kind of bundled that in my head as like, well, this is part of my health journey. I guess if patients and consumers do feel comfortable sharing information and feel like they're not going to get like shot down or told, that, hey, well, this is why you're telling me that, and kind of in that example that you gave before. In this day and age, we've got a lot more cleverer with our wearables that provide useful and insightful information, and a lot of it can be noise because you can measure pretty much anything these days. I'm super fascinated about like what it looks like in 2025 in your clinic specifically, Max, or anywhere else in GP land, about wearables and the data that they generate, and is that useful or interesting information for GPs, and has that kind of dynamic changed where patients are getting stuff and then GPs might want to see it?
I've heard you tell that story before. We busted on another podcast somewhere, and I was like,
"Oh, really? I thought that was the first time. I thought that was a new one."
No, I reckon you said it before. But like, and I think I almost wanted to yell back into the headphones a bit like, yeah, I still don't care because this is actually like unvalidated data, but I need to think about the fact that actually, all right, consumers are going this way. How do we help them? So as GPs, we have a very high, because of our training and the way we approach medicine, we have a very high standard that we will accept data from people as being validated and being useful and being something, whereas consumer-focusing companies don't actually do that. Like, your sleep score is probably not a validated score. It probably doesn't mean anything. It probably just means that your device has determined that you lay still for a bit. It doesn't actually cross-validate against some apnea study that they did somewhere. But, you feel nice about your sleep score maintaining, I don't know, Emerald here or whatever the hell it says. But so there's the side of, we should be listening to consumers because they're clearly crying out for things, and that's more health data. Commercial providers are coming into the void and filling it with fluff in order to fill that and sell you things. Well, I'd love if Fitbit actually had a validated measure that I could then cross-reference into my PMS and use long-term. So we look at things like, I would be interested in your watch triggering AF events That's super interesting. That's a validated measure that will affect your outcomes, that will affect your health. I'm interested in validated blood pressure management and measurement in the community. I would love to have you having like a regular blood pressure feed that I can look at over time and validate and look at and things like that. So it does fit that same idea of, yeah, the void is getting filled with fluff in the absence of us giving solutions to consumers who are crying out for them. They're already going out and spending their money on it.
Mm. Jayne, I'd love to hear from your side, from the vendor side, because there's so many things you could plug into, but you've got to be selective at the same time.
Yeah, I think there's the bi-directional loop is really interesting. So I know, and you talk about your experience, Pete, but even mine, I think there's always this experience, like I've had a particular consultation, let's just say, and will I ever get access to that result? Is it, no news, good news? Will someone call me if I need to book an appointment? Like there's sort of this, you're sort of left in this ether post-consultation where you're actually not quite sure. And I think that is the information kind of coming out of MediRecords into a patient portal that empowers patients and gives them access. And I know results is a massive value prop for Max and his customers. I know how many patients you're sharing results with, Max. But also I think there's a space where that bi-directional loop from patients in is also ripe for disruption. Max mentioned this kind of early in our introduction, but I actually went out and sat in his clinic for 2 days early. Gosh, I think it was this year or last year. And it was incredibly insightful to not only watch Max's approach to using the software, but also approach to patients. He uses Heidi AI, which was really interesting to watch, kind of a totally hands-off experience. You kind of hit record, you face the patient, you're giving them your full, your full attention, and you're totally present, not using technology or entering anything into a PMS at all, which is actually not an experience I've had of a doctor before, which I thought was pretty amazing. But after that, you had a couple of patients come in with like scribbled pieces of paper of their blood pressure, like a whole diary scribbled in a notebook. Or there absolutely is a space for us to digitize that in the right way so that it gets created and then logged in their clinical record in MediRecords. So you can reference it asynchronously. You could look at it plotted over time. You don't have to, glance at a scribbled handwritten piece of paper and only in the consultation event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And like all these tools are useful when people use them, and people use them because they see value. And I would think from your side, because I'd love to learn a little bit more about, because you've touched on the patient portal a little bit, Jayne, on the MediRecords side, because a patient portal from a practice management system or something that a clinical system might use, where historically you've been very focused on, I guess, positioning it to the clinicians. Is there I'm firstly keen to understand what that patient portal looks like, but then my next question, which I'll ask you after, is more about engaging with those consumers so they use it. But firstly, what does this thing look like, and tell me about what it does.
Yeah, so it's called Engage. We refer to it as Engage. It's a web-based patient portal, but it's been built to be mobile responsive first. So mobile first design, but it can be used on desktop and mobile. It's actually white labeled the brand of our customers. We know patients don't know or need to know about MediRecords. It's their experience. We really want it to be an extension of our customer's brand. So Max's, as example, is Whitebridge, and we chose a beautiful beachy teal, which was his preference. And so we can white label it so that the patients actually have that familiarity from the get-go. It's got core what you would always expect as part of a patient portal around management of your appointments and booking management, access to your clinical records. So we've got sharing of medical information, sharing of results, which is absolutely a huge use case for Max and the Whitebridge team. But we've got documentation, so sharing medical certificates, digital documents, referral letters, etc. So that's kind of what we would call our clinical record. And we then have a piece that I'm particularly excited about, which is really, we refer to it as clinical actions, but essentially it's a to-do list. It allows the clinicians to assign to-do activities to the patient directly and have them complete it. So you can assign that they have a recall off the back of a result coming in, and the reason I love this is actually when I think about patient experience as a patient myself, but just consumer experience. People want to know what they need to do. They want it to be just super obvious. When do I need to do it by? Okay, great, I'm time for my flu vax, in 12 months, or I need to have my cervical screening, or whatever it may be. Creating a nice patient-facing to-do list that the clinician has access to seeing what's outstanding, what's been done, etc., I think is a really big value add to kind of actionable care planning together, like as a joint responsibility.
Yeah, and from Max's side, I'd love to hear from you on like what that uptake looks like, or who you really see the kind of patient portal suiting, because this is our world, the healthcare side and the technology piece, and we know what a patient portal is and all those variants. Whereas there's a large percentage of patients where their engagement with a GP might only be a very small percentage of their week that they have. So, and we have a lot of apps on our phone, and we have the My Health Record. We have all these other kind of tools that we can access information in as well. How's that look like for you? Because in the end, you're the one, Max, kind of positioning it or selling it, I guess, for want of a better term, to the patient. And if they don't open it, then it's kind of a bit of a miss. So how does that look in the real world in terms of saying, here's the app and get stuck into it?
The patients are really keen to have access to their data. They want like the same way you're looking at your Fitbit and your watch and whatever else. Like, people are really, really interested in their health data, and they're very, like, you can't talk for every consumer, but there's a lot of consumers who are really, they get health activated by more data, and they want to do more, and they want to track it, they want to see it. So we were just responding to that. We started out responding to that by using our AI scribe and generating like patient-facing summaries on the back end of consults and just emailing it to patients, which they just frost over. They loved it. They were like, oh, how good is this? Like, this is, a summary of what we spoke about and what the plan was. And historically, that would have been really challenging to do because you would have to write it in patient-friendly language, but then using the scribe products to generate these and then just emailing out of the scribe for the right patients was just, it was great for patient sort of loyalty. It was great for activation, and you just helped the relationship. I think Jayne saw some of that and she was like, well, actually, yeah, like, you are now giving all these patients homework. How can we then link them in more? And so giving them actions and giving them a plan, that's my job. I'm meant to be kind of their health Sherpa. I'm meant to help them to the top of the mountain, except the top of the mountain's when you die. But, I'm meant to help them all the way there. And there's all this stuff along the way that we help them with. And it's giving me more tools to do that. Yes, we were just ahead of sharing by default a little bit with results. That's kind of the elephant in the room. The government's going to do this anyway. But I think share by default's only one part of what patients really want. They want to see the correspondence out. They want to see your referral letters. They want to see the correspondence coming in. They want to see what the neurologist said about them. And they have a right to. This is their stuff. This is their things. I get a lot of clinicians who get really panicky about the idea of sharing data and sharing notes, and, they're going to think I'm an idiot. But my analogy is, it's like police body cams. Yes, 1% of you are actually charlatans and you should be caught by your terrible work you do, but 99 point something % of people, it just demonstrates what an exceptional job you do, and it actually just activates your patients and helps them to sort of be better at what they want to do.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think about the experience that someone has, and a lot of people would have had it, where it's like, oh, and like, people make a point to tell a story. It's like, could you believe it? I just had a blood test and I got home and it's like on my app and I'm looking at the results, and people like it blows their mind. So I guess what I'm getting at is there's such a low bar at the moment in healthcare as an opportunity to delight, I guess. But the technology exists in order to do it. And I guess if that's creating that excitement, you would hope then that, delight or excitement or acceptance of that kind of access to information then translates to outcomes. Are you finding that it then results in some measurable outcomes for you yet, Max, in terms of whether it's more patients coming through the door or better outcomes or any other kind of things that, or is it still just generally that positive vibes and the engagement with the clinic and then hopefully more will come from there?
We're seeing some examples of patients having their information and then being able to share it more widely with their team. I guess it's just an example of what My Health Record was supposed to be. We had a patient recently who's chronically unwell with a transplant, who's had some really long-term grumbly issues. She's very health literate. She was up the coast, and then she had some deterioration in her bloods, and then we managed to we called her, had a quick video consult, explained to her what was going on. So we went down to the local ED. She was up the coast, so obviously completely out of network. She pulled out her portal. She showed them what her creatinine was doing. what her sodium was doing. She could show them the list of all the medications. She could show them the referral letter I'd written to the transplant team a year before that had some of her background data. And she's had it all on her phone. So she just showed it to the ED physician. And it was really streamlined and really simple. And it's like, I mean, this is obviously bypassing what my health record is supposed to be doing all the time. But ultimately, it's activating patients and giving them their data just makes everything run more seamlessly and empowers people. And that's what we need to do in the modern age. No one should be calling my clinic, waiting on hold, and then having to ask for a copy of their hemoglobin from 12 months ago. That's nuts.
Yeah.
It's inefficient and it's wasteful and it doesn't respect their own intelligence.
You say it sounds nuts, but it's probably an experience we're all pretty familiar with, which just demonstrates that gap and the opportunity that exists for us there.
God, we deserve to get disrupted, don't we? We deserve it so badly.
That's a great way to put it. Jayne, in the context of all of that and the direction that we're going and the work that MediRecords is doing, I'd love to learn about, I guess, future state, where you see where engaged the patient portal is going, and more generally how that's kind of influencing what MediRecords is doing in the rest of the products there.
Yeah, I think engage really, so we had, in terms of uptake, I think we saw about 100 patients active in the first 2 weeks at Whitebridge. So we've seen this, so we've started rolling out to a few more of our customers now, and we're about to launch to the broader market, which is super exciting. One of the last pieces of the kind of bidirectional care puzzle that I see is digitising forms. We're currently working on that at the moment. So to be able to digitize clinical forms for health assessments and have that flow back into the patient's record, as well as administrative forms, then you could have almost like a totally contactless, frictionless experience where you've booked an appointment. You might have to complete an assessment form prior or an assessment form afterwards, and have that all right back into the record. So that really that's our focus we're currently working on at the moment in terms of our engage capability. More broadly at MediRecords, it's a very, very exciting time to be a software vendor at the moment. I think we are absolutely embracing all things AI. We've launched our first Evolve. Evolve is our AI product stream. We've launched our first feature, Max was again our guinea pig, thanks to Max, which was an AI patient summary. And it was actually an idea that came from being out in Whitebridge and a couple of other customers who were heavily using Scribe, which I think is a fantastic innovation. Scribe, it means, crazy extensive notes. But what it meant was that what I would see is when you were seeing a new patient, you have to then go through the past consultations, and instead of looking at a couple of shorthand, letters here or there, you're actually reading through pretty large chunks of text now to catch up with what's actually happened to the patient. So we created a AI patient summary, which pulls out and summarizes the clinical consultation, as well as showing you any recent results or correspondence that's happened since the last consult. That's kind of a bit of a teaser of what we're hoping to deliver with Evolve. So really looking at administrative workflows, how do we leverage AI to streamline and make them as frictionless and effortless as possible, as well as trying to get really good quality data and patient engagement almost as automated as we possibly can. Of course, keeping the clinician in the loop, of course, having the clinical workflows and approval workflows that we know are necessary with AI. But that's definitely a strong influence for the next 12 months for sure.
Yeah.
So one of the really interesting kind of side things has been, as Jayne said, we generate more and more and more stuff, and now we need AI to read our AI in order to actually bring it back home. And the other one was that the software vendors very much determine where we as general practitioners will go next. We are, as small general, especially independent small GPs, we're very compliant, scared, and we're very worried. We don't have the capabilities to really go out and evaluate. I've got a bunch of vendors who come to me with all these AI receptionists, AI this, AI that, AI email, AI everything. And I don't think we have the sophistication as small local GPs to actually properly assess these vendors and decide whether they're compliant, whether we are actually breaching privacy laws, et cetera, et cetera. So having the PMS, your trusted PMS, then actually doing that work for you and bringing you the product is really helpful as a small general practice. It means that we also skip this whole SaaS fatigue. If I see one more invoice for one more one-off service every month, it's going to just do my head in. So it's ultimately, it's coming from one big source of truth, It is coming from a vendor who, I assume MediRecords works with defense and works with all these other people. So I assume their compliance is way higher than me and my practice manager reading something from some random software developer. And it means it's all bundled into one. Like for us, I don't work for MediRecords. I don't get anything from them. I pay my software fees like everyone else. But it's for us, we just want it to be simple and efficient, and we don't need layers upon layers upon layers of partner solutions.
I love that kind of just real approach and the clinic owner, like I guess small clinic owner's perspective is really influencing then the roadmap and what gets done on the MediRecords side. Because that's whilst it's a single GP clinic in Newcastle, there's a lot of clinics like that around Australia. I'm keen, just as we close out the conversation, Max, to just get your take, particularly these days, in what that looks like as a small clinic owner in Australia in 2025, and what that outlook looks like. You've shared a little bit about the day-to-day and the things that are front of mind for you. What do independent GP clinics in Australia need these days, and who needs to do it?
Ultimately, we need to be more productive and more efficient. So a lot of what we do is our front office, clinical work is deeply inefficient. Our skills are a little bit wasted, but it's not in terms of I need someone else to do task substitution. I just need more roadblocks out of the way in my day-to-day work, my clicks, my bouncing off softwares, my get a note from your doctor providers, my demands from CIRA and work cover insurers to clarify this and do that. My demands from the local nursing home to just do this bit of paper and this bit of form. Like we can be infinitely more efficient, but we need tools to help that productivity and efficiency. Recently it's probably been a bit of a shift, but for years the impulse for people is go and see your GP. However, increasingly it's less and less go and see your GP and more like just go and get someone to do it for you. So it's kind of disappointing as a provider who knows that we can genuinely make people live longer, happier, healthier lives with the skills that we have, that we let that slip away. And so we really need to have tools to keep up with our consumers and to keep up with their demands of their UI and, the way they want to engage and the way they're happy to pay for it. They just need the tools to actually be there to do it. And the last one is, this is always a trope in kind of health tech and things like that, but just remembering who's paying for it all in the end. So I think there's a ton of providers out there who have lovely solutions, but if it's patient focused, the clinicians probably won't pay for it. The product, the clinic owner probably doesn't want to pay for it. The LHG is not going to pay for it. The PHN is not going to pay for it. So there has to be a bit of a shift in, what the value proposition is, but also like how you appeal to those people and how you help them to want to pay for these solutions.
Yeah, 100%. I'm just reflecting on, I feel like we should have this as a weekly conversation, because I'm just really enjoying getting the real world take on what's happening in the GP landscape, because I feel like that would hit home with a lot of the with anyone checking out this episode today. If they want to learn more about MediRecords, they can jump onto the show notes of this episode and our website and check out the listing there in previous episodes too. And I'm sure you'll be able to check out future episodes with Max when we do those at some point in the future too. So Jayne, Max, it's probably all the time we have time for in this conversation, but looking forward to connecting again soon. Thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pete.
Thanks.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking Health Tech. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.